Welcome back to a bevy of bloods for round 10 of the 2023 season. Stevo and I try to wring out as much as we can out of this win over the Roos in the pretty controversial circumstances that they were. So fluff up your tail feathers and settle in for a potentially biased yarn about all things to do with our beloved bloods.
City Swans.
Okay, Swans fans, here we have 100% of the population of Finland that enjoys Vegemite. Welcome back, Stevo.
Cheers, Chris. Yeah, I reckon I'm 50% of the population because my good mate Wyatt, who from our footy team, he's a Crows fan, but he's getting about half my supply every time I go to Australia. I bring him back a jar. So between the two of us, we're probably getting through most of it. But yeah, mate, it's good to be here. This is the first time this year I've been here to review a win, and even though it was not the most inspiring win, it was a win, and I'll take it. And we can actually have a partially upbeat chat for a change. It'd be nice.
Yeah, it hasn't been too many wins on this year, to be honest with you. So we've had limited spots to get too excited. And even then, as you suggested, this one's been a bit. We'll get into it, I guess. Look, let's get stuck into the game recap. But before I do, let me just quickly ask everyone out there to make sure you like our posts, Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Twitter, Instagram, everywhere that you see our stuff. It does make a big difference to the podcast, making sure we can get out there. And as I've said every other week, there's very minimal AFL-related Swan stuff out there in the world. And so make sure to support your guys where you can. All right, now into the game score recap. Last Saturday, our Sydney Swans defeated the North Melbourne Kangaroos by 3 points with a final score of 14-19-93 to 14-6-90. Right, Steve-O, controversial finish, and we'll get into that, but how did you feel about the win generally?
It was, yeah. It was funny. We've had a lot of Swans fans complaining about the umpires this year, and look, we just got given one, so I guess I'll take
Nice.
it. Yeah, I guess that's the apology for maybe the 2016 grand final, if not he's listening. Yeah, that was finally the even up that we got. Look, it was frustrating, wasn't it? Like from start to finish, the game was frustrating. I think Swans had the first 8 shots at goal of the day, and from those 8 shots, we got 2 goals, 5 behinds, and a complete miss. Didn't even make the distance. I forget who kicked it. I think it was Heaney or Hayward or someone. And that really set the scene for a pretty frustrating afternoon. But then we pinched it in the end. And look, I was happy to get the win. We'd lost, I think, 4 in a row. And it's always nicer to win than lose. Like, doesn't matter how the win comes. You always walk away from the game feeling better if your team gets a win. And it got the morale up a bit, especially with the young team. It's nice to just get that winning feeling into the group and a bit of positivity. So look, I was overall happy enough just to not lose 5 in a row.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. It is a tough way to win a game. It's a very tough way to lose a game. But I mean, if I was going to put in any kind of like good light, it would be, you have a footy department, you have a drafting department, you've got yourselves, the physical department, you've got yourself your doctors and your physios and everything. And then you've also got your admin department in a football team. And so they've all got to do their job in order to win a game. None has been more clear than this week of how important a good admin team is at this point.
Yeah.
But look, the win is great. Like I agree with everything you said there. It's great for morale. It's good for the guys. Something back for effort. But yeah, as you said, it wasn't the most convincing win. It wasn't convincing game at all. We had our hands in our heads for a big chunk of it when we were at the footy at the Tudor in Redfern. We're just like this. We got to do better than this. We're better the team than that. And don't get me wrong. I think the Roos stood up a lot more this game. I think they could smell some blood. And yeah, we just would manage to at least hold them off close enough to make something out of it. And we did. And look, if I'm going to put some serious light over it, a bit of optimism over the top of it. We had a stoppage inside our 50, 15 meters away from goal. I would like to think that we would have scored a goal there at that point anyway. Okay. Granted, it didn't pass that way. We had to get ourselves a 50-meter penalty and a free kick right in front of goal to make it happen. But I would have suggested that we would have got a decent shot at goal. So maybe without the help, we would have won, but that's all maybes. But yeah, I'm just happy to have it. Mate, did you see the North fans throwing stuff at the umpires at the end of the game?
No, I didn't actually, because I watched the game. I didn't watch it live. I mean, I was checking the scores because I'm not one of these people, because with the time difference, this game started very very early, like 6 a.m. or something, finish time, and I'm not one of these fans. Like my brother, for example, he's in Canada. He can not find out the scores and then watch the game like on replay, but not knowing the result. I can't do that. I'm too much of a nervous fan to even contemplate that. So I was checking the scores on the AFL app, and so then when I eventually got to actually watch the full replay of the game, they've already cut the game, so they've already taken out like all of the post game and stuff. So I just saw
Oh, okay, yeah.
like full time siren, players go off, and that was it. So I didn't realize that until you told me now. But what were they doing? What happened?
Yeah, there was all this. They were just chucking stuff onto the ground, throwing things at umpires, screaming at umpires, it's like it was their fault. And like they just applied the rules perfectly, exactly as the rules were there to be applied. Yeah, but it was bit ordinary, pretty ordinary show by the Roos fans who were, don't get me wrong, rightly frustrated, but probably frustrated the wrong people. To be fair,
Yeah, it probably frustrated their club too. I mean, there was only
yeah,
21,000 people turned up on a Saturday afternoon under the roof. So okay, it might have been cold or wet in Melbourne in May, but still, it's not weather affected. 21,000
mm,
people show up. You know, there's their coach, who was meant to be the messiah and come and save them, is taken personal leave. Like all sorts of stuff going on. And I think, was it you actually that posted a stat on our group chat with the other guys from the podcast that North Melbourne's current record is quite similar to what Fitzroy's was when they got booted out of the AFL. Was that you that posted that?
yeah, it was. It was like a
Yeah.
hundred and something and seven. Sorry, seven and 100 and something for both teams. Last 120 games or something like that. And yeah, Fitzroy before they move up to Brisbane was basically the same record. So they're in a world of hurt.
Mm.
And as you said, their savior in Clarkson is he's taken leave for personal reasons. That's not questionable. But what is questionable is the dubious nature of some of the stuff that's happened prior to that. So we've got ourselves a bit of a situation, and the AFL is not helping it. I
No, they're
just
not.
personally, they're not. The AFL is doing a pretty ordinary job of all of this, to be honest with you. But I think Clarkson's pissed off enough people in his career that no one's giving too much of a hell, which is unnecessary. At the end of the day, you're guilty or whatever, but you got to look into it. But yeah,
Yeah, he's got a rap
yeah.
sheet going back a long way.
Mm,
Like in terms of like anger and violence and stuff, going back to the 80s. Like he was the one who famously king hit a bloke in one of the preseason exhibition games, or whatever it was, postseason exhibition games in London. Like in the 80s, he
yeah.
absolutely brutalized a bloke, and it's kind of been, thing after thing. So yeah, I guess you're right. There's probably quite a few people who are not that tolerant.
Yeah, even maybe the umpire that he was screaming at, like the 9-year-old umpire or whatever that he was screaming at one point at a children's game on one weekend, going back a couple of years, is one of the umpires that was involved in this situation this week. So God knows what's going on.
It's all come around.
He's got himself a
Uh,
bit of a situation
but
over
yeah,
there. So
But yeah, like
all
I've,
right,
I've
mate,
got
let's
no
get
ill feeling towards North Melbourne
yeah.
or North Melbourne supporters, besides the '96 grand final, which I was at actually, and I was a very upset young fella at that game. But
I
besides
do
that,
have lots. I'm very upset with them for booing Goodsy at his last game, and I will never forget seeing the blue and white and me screaming at them amongst that. So I do have a bit of no, I wouldn't say hatred. Hatred is way too strong a word. I do have some. Was it Schadenfreude when you like excited
mm,
about someone not doing so well? Yeah, that's me. And this one came timely. I did notice around the socials that a lot of people have a long memories about some of the things that North Melbourne have done, even to the point of like celebrating Clarkson for the potential racism that he was a part of over there at the Hawks, and then in Indigenous round clapping and celebrating him in the first quarter. You might not have seen that, but the fans had organised at a certain time of the day that a certain time of the game that they were going to start clapping in memory of him, kind of thing. He's still around.
yeah, they drew attention to it on the broadcast, and I didn't really
Mm,
make a huge amount of it at the time, but then they sort of made a thing about it, and fair enough. I think there's nothing wrong with wanting to show support for your coach and all that sort of thing,
mm,
but like you said, the timing of it, given the fact that it's Indigenous round and what he's accused of
yeah,
at the moment, and the whole very very badly handled process by all parties really around it that's going on through the AFL, and like I think they announced today that mediation that was going to happen has not happened, or it's not happening tomorrow or something. It's just one thing after another with it, with the process. And it was also in the 23rd minute, which I guess was his playing number when he played, wasn't it? 23.
it must have been, yeah.
But then at the same time, it's also Buddy Franklin's playing number. Like
Yeah, I was going to say, like,
yeah,
celebrate
like
Buddy and
that's
Michael
it. So
Jordan's. Why not?
I just
Yeah.
thought the timing of it seemed a bit unnecessary. But anyway, that's up to them to do. But still, it was a bit odd.
Yeah, it was a bit unnecessary, I kind of feel. But either way, all right, let's should we get back into the game?
Yeah, one
We've
thing
talked.
actually we should thank them for. John
Yeah,
Longmire, we got out of North Melbourne, so we should be grateful. So
that's a good
yeah,
point. That's a good
so
point.
cheers, thanks,
Yeah, cheers for
thanks
that.
North Melbourne.
We'll take it. Look, the good, the bad, and the stats, mate. Let's get stuck into some of the good. Hey, Stretch McAdams, that you and Noddy have been very hot on, was looking the goods, mate. It looked fantastic. Getting thrown up into AFL, age of 22, I think. He's like only played 4 years worth of AFL. Kind of feels like a bit of a rampy situation, mate. He's looking very, very good.
Yeah, we can hope so. I mean, yeah, not especially Noddy because he watches a lot of the reserves in particular, and also Matt from our chat. The two of them have both been very very positive on this guy. I haven't seen him play much except for some stuff on TV, but
Mm,
you know, he's like, and the trouble with ruckman is they can take a long time to come on. So we've really had trouble having any sort of ruck back up at the Swans for quite a long time. And if we can pluck one from the academy via what I think was the rookie list in the end, then that's a great
mm,
win. And we were chatting earlier with the other guys on the group chat as well that we don't need him to be a superstar. We're not expecting him to be Dean Cox or Nick Nat or any of these blokes. But if
mm.
he can be a solid ruckman who after 30 or 40 games can be a consistent AFL level player, then that's a massive win, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And having a young guy like that, I mean, who better than Dean Cox to have as your
Mm.
coach to like ramp you up the way? Don't get me wrong, like Dean Cox also has DNA in him that's just unreplicable. But so does Stretch. He's a big, I think he's what, 210, maybe 209 centimeters
Yeah, he's
already.
big.
Yeah, 100 kegs on him. And I think so for the listeners out there, both Stevo and Noddy are massive Union fans, more so Noddy. I'd suggest perhaps. I don't know. No,
Yeah, I sort of
yeah,
stopped following Union and League. I actually followed League a bit more, honestly, 'cause being from Central
yeah,
Coast. But
yeah,
but
yeah,
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 moving to Finland, it got too hard to follow everything because of the time zones, and so I just focused on the AFL, and that was it.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, they were saying like because Stretch comes from a rugby background, and Noddy was like, in order to be decent at his position these days, he needed to put on another 15 or 20 kilos, and one guy was like 30 kilos heavier. Like basically, enormous amount of bulk for even a big man. Like that just goes to show the freaking size of these guys in the union these days. And so Stretch kind of going into the AFL is probably suitable to his size and everything. And so yeah, I think we've got ourselves a competitor, as we could see on the ground, making some tackles, following up, and everything else. So very excited, like look, pumped about it. I think one really, really big good win that happened over North was to blood him, even if it was next to Goldstein, who's still to this day a competitor
Yeah, he taught
and
him a bit of a
still
lesson, but
decent
that's
AFL
good
player.
too. Like he gets to go
Yeah.
up against someone like that, and he got to carry the ruck for a good part of the game. Like he was the main ruckman in his first game, and I mean we'll talk about the injuries later on, but he's probably going to
Mm.
be the main ruckman for a while. So,
Yeah, it seems that way. Well
so
done,
you'll
Stretch.
get
You got
you'll get
yourself a
more
walk-on
chances.
start into an AFL team the year after their
Yeah.
premiership. Good on you, mate.
Yeah, and, like we don't expect anything massive from him even this year or next year or anything. But I think by the time he's 24, 25, and he's played 30, 40, 50 AFL games, and he looks
Mm.
like someone who could be like really solid ruck.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Agree with that. Look, even Laddams to begin with, I thought looked pretty decent. He got himself his 2 goals for his, I think it was half the game he played out. So yeah, look, pretty happy with the way he went. That was pretty nice of him. He was playing a bit better. He did have his one moment though. I recall that he was. I think he's the one that missed everything, perhaps. But he had. I was just thinking to myself, he's had his one. He's had his one moment where he's allowed to bugger something up. In other weeks, he's like thrown the ball. In other weeks, he's kind of deliberate. In other weeks, he's given it the ball to the wrong guy and got ourselves a 50-meter penalty into the goal square. Not into the goal square, into the 50. Sorry. So he has had his rap sheet and he added to it with some minor infringement this week, but he had his one. But he's also out for a while, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Mate, what else did you see from the weekend? The good, the bad, and the stats.
Oh, look, let's kick on with some more good because we actually got a
Good.
win. So why not just enjoy a bit of good for a moment? Buddy Franklin was awesome. He had a great game.
Yeah.
And so what? It's North Melbourne. You got to play yourself into form at some point, and he did. And like you said, Butch, he's shut people up at least for this week. That'll hopefully keep him quiet. We'll talk more about Buddy when we get to the best players in a bit because he was one of them. But really good to see him just say, "Look, I'm a good footballer, and this is what I do."
Yep. Yeah. Loved it. Yep. Yeah, we'll get into his stats in a little bit. He did pretty well for the game, and all the words about, he needs to retire immediately, as some of the guys like Montagna and those fellas had started suggesting. Like,
Did he
don't
say
give it
that?
up.
Did he?
Yeah, Montagna's an idiot. He was like, he
Oh man.
suggested that Montagna said that Buddy should just retire now and then just go on a worldwide trip around the AFL to all the stadiums, and so that the fans can celebrate him correctly. And I'm like, Buddy would not do that. Like, when has Buddy ever made it about himself? That's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my life, right? Anyway, he's going to buy his house next to Plugger's house, and those two are going to build up their own little village, and they're never going to be seen from again. That's it. They're done. Like,
Where's Plug, isn't he? Is he still? He when he retired, he went down to like Southern Highlands somewhere, didn't he? He was racing greyhounds, I think. I don't know if he's still doing that. That's what he was. I'm pretty sure he had a farm and stuff.
yeah.
And actually, I'll put this in now because this is not related at all. But someone told me the story. I forget who it even was. That they called up Plugger, someone from the Swans, the AFL. They wanted him to present some award or be at some
Oh, yeah.
ceremony
Yeah.
night or something like this. And he was on his farm. He was busy, and he said, "Oh, yeah, I'd like to be involved, but it's just problem is one of my cows is calving right now, so I can't really make it. Any chance you guys could drive up here to the farm? We could just do something here. You could bring the cameras. I don't know if that's the exact story, but it was
Yeah.
along those
Yeah.
lines. That it was like, yeah, no, I'm good. I got stuff to do.
Yeah, that's basically going to be Buddy in a year. He's
Yeah,
just going to like disappear and just never be seen of again for a while, and that's what he's allowed to do. He's been good enough. Yeah, him and Plug are going to go off and just be off together. So no, Lee Montagna, he's not going to make it about him for an entire year. He's going to call it probably last few weeks and then just get done with it. One
yeah.
last
And
game in
doesn't
the
everyone
MCG, one
know?
game in SCG, and then bye.
Like,
It
it's
is.
no
Yeah,
secret.
exactly.
Everyone
This is
knows he's
it.
going to retire. So this is your chance. If you're a supporter of football anywhere in the country, go watch him because this will be the last year. Just enjoy him.
Yep. Last time you're going to see him play against a team, that's probably it.
Mm.
Unless just outrageous circumstances, but I cannot see it coming. I can't see a whole lot of people throwing him a contract either way. So anyway, all right, look, next thing is despite the entire disaster of this season, right? Despite losing early the two McCartans, Rampy, now Millsy, Logan, and a few others along the way. We're still coming only one win out of seventh place on the ladder, as you were pointing out. That's surprising. And I think that goes to the point that Dan from Did the Swans Win, who's got a couple of social media accounts out there, I suggest watching him, listening in and watching him and following him wherever he is, was suggesting, look, the teams above us didn't need to churn ourselves over. And then we've got half a decent chance as long as we play our game and last until some of these injuries start coming back. He's got some legs because that's basically the way it is. The teams above us aren't doing that well, mate. What do you see from this?
It's really even. Like you've got that top six, and then there's already a 2 game gap, I think, between sixth and seventh on the ladder, and then from seventh all the way down to 12th, there's 4 points, and that's
Yeah.
it. Like it's very much up for grabs. What I think it'll probably end up coming down to in the end is, I mean, it's always who wins the most of these 50-50 games against teams that are in your same sort of bracket, but then
Mm,
also probably because we have three very uncompetitive sides this year in Hawks, Eagles, and bloody Roos that we just played, who
yeah.
gets to play them multiple times might end up deciding some of those spots. And I think Swans only get one double up against them, or maybe even none. I can't remember.
Mm. Yeah, because we got the high up the ladder. You know what's interesting? Collingwood hasn't played any of those teams yet. Collingwood still hasn't played Hawthorn North or West Coast as yet. So they've got themselves effectively, in theory, 3 gimme wins as well to even propel themselves higher up the ladder. So they're looking hot. But yeah, to your point, like Geelong and Adelaide, 1 game ahead of us, and they're coming 7th and 8th respectively. So despite it being a really bad year of injuries, like for what we've been able to do with keeping the team together with a bunch of young kids and some sticky tape, it's doing the job, and we're still within touch, very, 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 very lightly, but within touch of finals. So not writing it off, but the likelihood is low. But what's important right
Mm.
now, in my eyes, is just blooding these young guys, get the
Yeah,
most out of
totally.
them. Yeah. Look, unfortunately, we're going to move into the bad stats. The Roos were better at quite a few of these stats, and let me name a few. Inside 50s were -6, disposals -27, stoppages -24, clearances -20, uncontested possessions -37, marks -4, and tackles -10. We were nowhere near as competitive as we needed to be in order to really inch out this win better, or at least the Roos turned it on. Is that how you saw it, or do you think these stats are a bit of an anomaly?
I mean, I think we got smashed around the ball. Like just watching the
Yeah.
game, um, they had some very, very young raw midfielders. They had that young fella, I forget his name now. He just got drafted at the end of last year. He
Oh,
was like a
Sheasel.
high pick. No, not him. The other one, the one that got drafted after him, that was playing his first
Oh,
match.
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
He
yeah.
played in the centre, and he was running around next to Luke Parker and not looking overwhelmed at all. So he looked really good. They were up and about. They had energy. They also had Goldstein, who was doing very well in there. He was Goldstein as a 300 game something ish player, roughly thereabouts, and he
Mm,
was against a rookie. So I guess that helps. But they're midfielders, like they're ball players. They really did work hard, and they were explosive out of those stoppages. And the Swans looked a bit flat footed some of the time
yeah.
coming out of there. And that comes back to, I guess, maybe not having Mills in there also for a bit more stability, because really it's
Mm,
now Luke Parker and a bunch of kids, even though some of them are very, very good kids. They're very young. Um, so yeah, something is not going well in that centre square and around the stoppages to get smashed by North Melbourne, who are one of the weakest teams in the comp at that area of the game. Like
yeah.
if we lose stoppages -24, um, all that sort of stuff you've just listed against Carlton, even probably we get belted.
Mm. No, you're right. I don't think North were classy enough to finish it off to make the most out of those situations, make the most out of those stat lines, and it does kind of paper over the cracks when we get a win like that. We just like, oh yay! Like, so some of the humor around it is that some of the team, what do you call it? Some of the fans out there that have been calling for Horse's head have suggested Horse has got another week in him because we won this game against North. I'm like, it doesn't. I don't think it works that way, guys. Like, he's either tactically putting it together or he's not with what he's got, and we just don't have the pieces to put it together. So he's doing his best he can. Um, on a general sense, I was kind of happy with the way that players were playing. I felt effort was quite there. I felt they knuckled down, got competitive. It was quite a dirty game in aspects of it as well. There was a bit of niggly going on around, and yeah, I just felt that the Swans did what they had to. I mean, they were also a young team. The Roos also housing quite a young team outside of Goldie and Zebo and whatnot. But we did what we could. So yeah, happy about that. One of the stats that did go against us as well, but for the right reasons, was that they beat us in the interchanges, 76 to
Yeah, they did.
74.
God.
I mean, that's a big stat line. I feel I didn't realize that the biggest stat line and the most direct correlation to a win is the interchanges, but it wasn't this time.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
It was
Yeah,
nuts.
the things you learn in football.
Yeah, when that was, I couldn't believe it when I was watching it, because it wasn't that clear from the broadcast what even happened. It wasn't really until afterwards that it became that obvious.
Mm.
And I was like, man, nah, how do you get that wrong? Like, if you're North
I know,
Melbourne,
and
because
I saw somewhere, and I'm sorry for not remembering who posted it, but someone mentioned that I think it was a game against Carlton where the Swans, breached the interchange, and it was a really soft penalty. It was like a fine or something, and it was actually Carlton and the AFL went ahead and made those changes because of what the Swans did, and the irony to some years later to then come around and win a game off the back of it is pretty full on. So anyway, there's a bit of that for us. So yeah, look, we'll take the win, but whoosh, the stats didn't look in our favor otherwise. Mate, favorite moments and missed chances. Do you want to kick it off?
or my favorite, I already talked about Buddy, but I'm going to talk about him again because his last quarter. So if I can count
Oh,
the
yeah.
entire last quarter as a moment, um, he was amazing. Like, he was a real presence. He was a big reason the Swans managed to get over and get the win in the end when they started to fight back, because they were down by just under 3 goals in that last quarter and
Mm-hmm.
fought back hard. Buddy Franklin's just his presence and his attitude on the field was huge. He had three tackles in that last quarter. I mean, that's a key forward, like a full forward making 3 tackles in a quarter. That's like a 12 tackle game if you spread it out over a full match.
Yeah.
That's huge. And especially the one that I loved was after the Swans got that goal from McLean after the interchange breach thing, and it still had to go back to the centre. There was about 30 or 40 seconds left to play in the game after that. And there was a secondary ball up from the first bounce in the centre. And then from that, Buddy Franklin, North Melbourne sort of gets a bit free out the back. They get a space out the back of the stoppage. And Franklin comes steaming and wraps up the North player and locks him up. And that was pretty much the game right there.
I
And
love
that
that.
moment to me is a bloke who is still totally committed to to playing football and to trying to win games of football and playing with these guys like his teammates, and anyone who's willing to nudge him out on his retirement tour, well, good luck to him, because he's still clearly interested in playing, as we saw in that last quarter. He
Yeah.
was awesome. Yeah, that was my
Yeah,
favorite
like,
moment.
that was awesome. I remember that massive crunching tackle to
Mm,
keep the ball. And like, I think the player, I don't know who it was running out of the center square, but they looked like they had a step on them. They're like, oh, look, I'm going to step to my right and get onto my boot. And Buddy just read it perfectly and just like crunched him like a rugby style tackle, just took him out. He had no chance to get onto his boot in the end. And yeah, if it wasn't for that bloody stoppage, that ball runs off and we're 6 behind potentially. So yeah,
mm.
that was awesome. That was awesome. Um, what I really, really, really loved was the Heaney goal to get us within 3 points that set us up for the win. Running in, it was actually a really good effort. I don't know. So we got it out of a stoppage clearance on the wing. I think it bounced into the hands of Gus Bus. Um, and he pumped it out forward, touched a couple of hands in the air before it landed, I think in Warner's perhaps, and then over to Heaney. And then Heaney went on to kick a beautiful goal from just inside 50 on the run, and then got us within 3 points. That was awesome. And if I recall correctly, it was actually pretty much in the exact same spot as the exact same thing that Goulden had done earlier in the game.
Yeah, it was close.
From
Yeah.
about 55, I think Gordon kicked it from. But yeah, basically the same thing. That was really, really lovely. I love that spot. That was great.
Yeah, and they're the killer ones too, because both of them were ones where, because you said they both kicked it pretty much on 50, and they sort of just dribbled through at the end. And they're those ones where if you're a North Melbourne defender and you see that, and you know you're like 2 meters further away than you can be to get to that, you just think, oh man, like you know it's going to go through, and you just it's horrible, horrible, horrible. But
A bad feeling.
they were both great goals.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's one of the ones we mentioned there. Right. Anything else from your side, mate? Anything to bring it up?
No, I guess, I mean, the other thing that I really like with that Goulden one, I'll talk a bit more about him because
Yeah,
he's another
please.
one of my favorites. Yeah, I love the way that he follows up his work. Like before that goal, he had the ball on the wing, like I think even just back of centre wing, and he launched it into the forward. I think McAndrew got up there and got a massive fist onto it, and there was a couple of us Swans in the contest too, but McAndrew was one that sort of stands out because he's 10 centimetres taller than even the next tallest bloke. So you see him down there, and so the ball came out, spilled out to just outside the 50, and then you see Goulden, who's rather than just sitting back on the wing thinking, yeah, look at me, good for me, I've had my kick, I've got my stat, off I go. He's
Mm.
followed up, and he picks the ball up about 60-ish out, grabs it, settles, and then launches it in and kicks a goal. And that was the one that sort of started the revival in that back part of the last quarter.
Yeah.
So it just shows his work effort. Like he
Yeah.
really, really, he runs hard, and he always makes sure he stays in the contest. And I think I've talked previously earlier this year about a piece of play where he gets like 3 very important touches in the forward half, centre, and back half, all within 30 seconds. It was the same sort of thing again from him.
Mm.
Just the smarts of the guy, the hard running. He's a very, very gifted player. If they did his draft again, he'd probably go, top 2 or 3.
Yeah, yeah, agree with that. He played so well this week again, and he was a bit unlucky. I don't think he posted for any of the Brownlee points. Not Brownlee points, the coaches' votes. Perhaps maybe he got himself one, but he was just continuing on his effort and quality from all the other weeks that he's been playing, and he's just continually going. And yeah, as you said, just does everything. Hey, oh, love him, love it. Look, one of my favorite moments is when the Kangas admin staff dropped their clicker. I'll stop now. I'm sorry. I'll stop. That's my last one. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
All right.
poor North Melbourne. Well, not really,
I
but
feel
yeah,
bad for him.
I don't.
I feel bad for him.
I really
A
don't.
bit,
I
not too
don't have
much.
any malicious feeling, but I have no sympathy either. I
Yeah.
remember being a teenager when they were dominant and Wayne Carey was the best player in the world, and it was just, you were terrified every time you played him. I remember that. So
Yeah. Okay. They've had their time.
yeah, that's it. It's their time to be a bit down the list now.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. Don't be goodsy. Moving on to the Bob Medal, which is our equivalent of the Bob Skilton. We give 3-2-1 points to the best Swans player in each game, with the highest points receiving the ability to believe that this was a win purely on merit and without any administrative issues. Are we okay with that?
Sure.
All right, done. So right off the bat, we give 3 points to Parker 2 points to Warner, and 1 point to the grizzling old veteran, Buddy. Mate, do you want to take it away with Parker?
All right. Well, we've got here. He's the first stat that's listed here. We've got is about 10 stitches. So yeah, he walked away
Yeah, wow.
with a bit of medical work to the top of his head. Um, there was one point actually where he had that massive bandage, and I forget who it was. One of the other North players also had a big bandage across his head, and I matched up
Yes.
on each other. And I thought, what
Yeah,
sort
that
of
was
game are
cool.
we playing? Why do we people do this?
Why do people
Like,
involve themselves when they're
yeah,
bleeding from their heads on a
this
regular?
is
Yeah.
this is ridiculous. Yeah, so a bunch of stitches. Luke Parker, best on ground for stitches. Also best on ground, best on ground for score involvements. He had 9 of those. He got a couple of contested marks, which for a midfielder is solid. 10 ground ball gets, which is best on ground. 28 touches, 18 contested touches, which was again the best on the ground. There's a theme here that he was just the best on the ground.
Mhm.
He got a goal, and I love it when Luke Parker gets a goal because if Luke Parker is hitting the scoreboard, it's one of those sort of like barometer things. So me, like I always feel
Yeah.
that when he's hitting the scoreboard, the Swans are up and about. He made 5 tackles. He had a great game. I think Parker. He was a clear best on ground for me.
Yep. Agree with all of that. It was fantastic. It was clearly best on ground even from the first quarter. We were all just like this. You could see him willing it through. If he's up and about, as you said, like it's when you can really hang your hat on it. You can really have faith that like effort is there, and Parker's effort is, and then question it is hard. And again, post GWS game, turning it on.
Mm.
This is. I'm telling you, my theory that he plays well after GWS game is solid. So come along, jump on board the train, both of those things. We can get a
Anything
bus.
you like. We need to make sure we play the Giants round 1 next year, and then
Yeah,
Parker will just
yeah,
kill it from the start, won't he?
that's it. Right. So like right now, I've got about 6 people that probably follow on my theory. So we've got ourselves one of those like Tarago. I'm hoping by the end of the
Tarago.
season, I'm hoping by the season we've moved ourselves into a minibus or like a half bus, and then we'll talk about trains and plans after that. But for right now,
Yeah,
we've got ourselves a Tarago. Climb aboard, plenty of room, we'll be fine. Mate, 2 points for Warner. If you don't mind, I'll grab this one for a
go
sec.
for it.
31 disposals, second on ground, but number 1 for the Swans. 21 of them being kicks. Now that's surprising. That is a man getting out there and trying to get the ball going forward. Maybe he's been given the all clear from the coaches to just start getting some clearance numbers, and it seems to have shown 644 meters gain, second on ground, first for the Swans. 3 tackles and 7 clearances. Again, second on ground, but first for the Swans. Alongside a goal and 3 tackles. He had a really, really good game, and another one of those players that was showing absolute class when we really needed it. That's what I saw.
Yeah, and good to see him getting a goal too. Like Parker, he's another one. Like if players like Parker and Warner, Goulden also got a goal. If these sort of guys can have some scoreboard impact, it helps out, I think, a lot.
Yeah.
And it makes their midfielders have to think about being more accountable too.
Especially his style where he's just bolting it in from the center square. Like we've seen enough times where if he's getting going and he's getting a run on and he's got himself in full flight, he's bloody well hard to catch. He's been caught once or twice this year, I think, and he hasn't been that accurate at hitting a goal running from the center square, unfortunately, as Noddy and I had picked up before. But if he can get going, that's like an extra 1 or 2 goals per game. For a center guy just trying to get a clearance, we'll take that. Like that's solid. So definitely would make an enormous difference, especially in these closer games we've lost this year, where he's missed a couple. If he can get himself back into accuracy, that's going to go a long way to helping us all out. Mate, 1 point to Buddy. Do you want to take it away with Sir Buddy?
Yeah, I guess I've already talked up Buddy a bit, but I guess we can add a few of his stats. He had 4 contested marks, which was really good, best on the ground. And a lot of people are constantly sort of on Buddy for not taking a lot of contested marks. I think he really did that. 3 goals. I didn't talk about his goals before, but yeah, 3 goals. Kicked it behind, so 4 scoring shots, and he was massive. Like I said already, he was a presence on the field when he really needed to be, especially in that last quarter. And that's what you want from your champion players. And if we look at our best 3 in this game, it was Parker and Franklin is 2 of the 3
Mm.
best. And these senior guys, they really saw a game that needed some leadership, and I think they gave it really well.
Yeah, 100%. And just to give you an idea, he was third in tackles for the Swans. So
Yeah, okay,
Rowbottom
well,
and
yeah.
Gordon with 6 tackles each, and then Franklin and Parker. So both Parker and Buddy with the 5 tackles, second on ground, next to McAndrew of all places. So yeah, like that's you don't necessarily expect to see your full forward getting out there and smashing up all his tackles at the same rate as a midfielder, but it just goes to show that he came with intent and he came to start like making an impact in the game, which is what you want to see from the butt star. Mate, any notable mentions for some players that had a decent game that we should flag out?
Yeah, we got a few. We already talked about Goulden. I guess we don't need to talk much more about him because we talk about him every week because he's amazing.
Is that
But
good?
this
Yeah.
week it's the others' turn to shine maybe. But he was very good. I really liked Robbie Fox's game. I think that he, in the absence of literally the back line, like all of them,
In the
he's
absence of an entire
yeah,
AFL backline, yeah, we have Robbie Fox.
he's doing a very, very good job, like back there, because it's effectively him, Will Gould, who's only played a few games, he's a rookie, and then Francis, who's trying to establish himself in his own right and has sort of swung backwards and forwards between back and forward. Robbie Fox has been a rock back there, and not only does he sort of hold that whole backline together, he also wins a lot of the footy and does good things with it when he brings it up the field. So I thought he was great. He was really close to getting votes from me, actually.
Yep, fair enough. He was super good. I loved him. I'll take him one. One would be Blakey. So Blakey with 10 1%ers, 8 intercept possessions, and 19 disposals, and a pretty high disposal rate efficiency from memory. I think it was in his 80s. So he did a pretty good job trying to get what he could out of the game. He had a couple of great runs. I saw one run was I might have gone into favorite moments, but I think it was like Heaney or maybe Rowie and Warner passed the ball between them. And in comes Blakey, typically going down his normal route, which would be straight lines through to center square. And you could see the Roos actually kind of set themselves up to like put some bodies in front of him. What does Blakey do? He takes the old winger or fullback run from NRL, heads off right a little bit, and then just cuts through everyone and finds himself another 20 meters of space that he runs into and gets himself into the inside 50. So yeah, Blakey looking really, really nice. I love what I saw from him. Anyone else on your radar there, mate?
I guess the other two we haven't talked about that were also really good was the Tours. We talked about McAndrew quite a bit, so we probably need to talk more about him. But he had a really solid first game. Showed that we can hopefully have a good developing ruck coming through in him,
Yep.
and he'll take time. I think the main thing for fans is that we need to be patient because he's a very raw dealing ruck. He's going to take a while. So he was promising, and then McLean. I think McLean. He's pretty much the last man standing when it comes to
It's just managed
comes to
his
like
health.
forwards and
Yeah.
rucks and stuff. He's the only guy left, and he's doing well. And maybe just what he's needed is to know that he's going to be playing every week, and that's good for your confidence. Who knows? But he's been doing some good stuff, not just when he's on the ball. He's always been pretty good when he's been on the ball, like the pressure and the run he gives as a backup ruck, but forward as well. He's
Mhm.
been giving a good option. So yeah, I thought he was played well also on Saturday.
Yeah, he runs all day. Coach, Swans fans, he runs tons and tons and tons. And maybe for next week, we'll put together like an idea of how much some of these big men run and where he sits in it. But he basically runs the same level, if not more, than most of the midfielders. So
Yeah,
he
he's
gets
he's hitting
around.
14 plus Ks a game, and that's
Yeah,
what your top midfielders are doing. He runs a
yeah,
lot.
that's wild for a big man. And when he gets his hands on the ball, if you watch the game again, you'll realize that he's in the middle of it. He's in amongst the pressure, and he still manages to make a decent decision with a handball or a kick or something. Typically a handball if you find someone. So he does the right things around the ball, and I've always been a big fan of him. He's been a bit shaky at some points, but just the amount of effort and just the quality, the general quality of a player that he is, I'm a big fan. So I would like to see him hopefully hold his spot and make the most of it while he's there. All right, mate, let's get stuck into the post game. So, unfortunately, we get straight into the injuries. Another injury to a key player, Laddams with a banged up ankle. I don't know whether it was ligament or bone. I think it was ligament, but we presume it's going to be 8 weeks out. Like this season, the hoodoo continues.
Yeah,
It's
it was
just
bad.
awful.
Yeah, he's going to be out for a while.
Yeah, I mean, given that Hickey was out for delayed concussion, we don't know how he stands. I hope he's doing okay. We've got Laddams definitely out for anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks. We presume, we don't know. That's about it for our rucks, and then we got Stretch. So Stretch is our lone ruckman. Amati, of course, was the guy who was chopping out in the ruck. He's out. I don't know what it looks like for. They suspected it the second half, but I doubt it very much. It might be the season for him. Um, And then we've also got McLean, who's trying to do what he's best he can. And to be fair, he's done pretty decently out of the ruck. He's not been pushed up too much. So we really are like scraping the barrel, as you said. Stretch McAndrew, as good as a game that he played for his first game in the AFL, he's very, very young. He's going to be shown up. He's going to be bullied. It's going to be a tough gig for him for a while, but I think that he's up for it. So let's see where he ends up. Mate, one of the other things I wanted to bring up, the fans are starting to turn on Will Gould. I'm noticing out there. What do you have to say to this? Now, remembering that Will Gould was the favoured child that everyone was pumped about having into the team. Swans fans were talking about him incessantly for about 2 years, and then he finally got his spot once we had all those injuries come through, and he won the game against Richmond this year. Since then, what do you think has transpired with his game, and what do you think we should be thinking of when we think about Will Gould?
I think we should look at him like we look at any other guy who's only played 4 or 5 games of AFL. That it's too early to know if he's going to be the superstar defender that we hoped for, or if he's maybe just. And looking at him, like there's nothing when you watch him play that makes you think, okay, this guy is going to be a star. But then sometimes with footballers, they don't show it until they do. Think of Chad Warner, like. In his first couple of games, you're like, okay, this kid's just going to probably run around a half-forward flank and not bother anybody. And then within 12 months, he was a superstar. So, so it's kind of hard to know after a handful of games. That's the first thing that I would say. The second thing is that the situation that he's being brought into is not the ideal way to blood a key defender. Like ideally, you would have him in the back
Mm.
line with Rampy and one of the McCartans. So you'd have him as the third one, learning off the two senior experienced defenders. Whereas now he's in a back line with Fox, who's not a key defender. He's just filling a hole, and Francis, who's a bit of a swingman, who himself is very much trying to get himself established. So it's not an easy gig to bring the guy into. And honestly, I'm not going to talk him up more than I think that he is. Like he doesn't look anything spectacular at the moment, but we won't know until he's played more games. And so until then, let's just watch him play. We've got no one else to put there, so let's all watch him.
That's a part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I can understand why some fans are maybe gotten cold on him, expecting him to have run on and be like the absolute superstar that he was seen to be pumped about. And I think if you were watching the VFL before he got on, you would have realized that he's like, well, he's doing the job. He's definitely one of the better players in the VFL, but he's not lighting it up in any way stretch of the imagination. But yeah, I agree. Just give him some time. He has not had a proper run at it, as you said there, without a back line, without something to bounce off, without having to take on the third man. You know what I mean? He's having to do quite a lot. And given that we are just lacking in speed in that back line, his speed is definitely starting to show itself off a bit, and people are starting to pick up on it. But give it a bit of time. And the other thing out there also, who we're going to replace him with? Like,
Yeah.
we've hit the limit of our backmen. That's basically it. That's basically the limit of AFL-ish quality of backmen we have. We don't have anyone else. So he's
Like we
going to
got
have to do the
Melican,
job.
but Melican's
Manly, of
been
course,
injured,
yeah.
like very badly injured. Like I think was
Mm.
the last. I think the last game he played. I might be wrong, but I think his last game was the elimination final loss to the Giants like a year and a half ago. I
Yeah, it
think that's
was.
the
Where
last
Foxy,
AFL
we
game.
felt, should have got the run instead. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the last time he played AFL, and even then he'd had a lot of injury problems. So who knows where he's at because he's still in the VFL. So we have to
Mm.
assume that if they thought he was a better option, he would have already been in. Um, so yeah, and it's like it's not just like poor Gould having to like you think like if he was playing with those two more experienced defenders, he'd be standing the third tall. I mean, he's
Mm.
probably playing that role now, but he's not doing it with the same support structure around him that he would
Mm.
have coming in as a absolutely raw rookie. And it's really hard to develop like a cohesion in a defensive group anyway. And then when you've got to come into that as a rookie with a bunch of other people who aren't usually playing those roles, it's really hard. Honestly, like I think that I'm quite um, what's the word, like tolerant of maybe this
Yep.
guy takes quite some time. If he gets there at all, maybe he doesn't, but we don't know unless he plays.
Yep. No, agree with all of that. Every bit of that is bang on, I feel. Um, Look, any other replacements? Now with Laddams out, I suspect, as we said, Stretch is in for good unless Hickey can make his way back in. And even then, we have the need for probably some support there. Do you see any other changes around the field? Anyone that's kind of, I know Dill made his way back in, wasn't the most impactful representation. Some other names have been thrown around. You've got some numbers here for the VFL.
Oh, we had a few in the VFL. I mean, the VFL aren't going well. We know that they haven't won a game yet, and they lost by 10 goals to Port Melbourne. And funnily enough, a former Swans ruckman who was carrying their ruck division in that match,
Crayfish,
Sam
yeah.
Naismith, yeah. So he got 43 hitouts and 17 touches, but that's another thing that we can talk about in a sec, maybe. But so there's actually a couple of Swans that are actually senior listed relevant players that did actually do pretty well in the reserves this week. Corey Warner got 26 touches and a goal. Sam Wicks had 19 touches and 8 tackles, which is a good effort for Wicks as a sort of smaller forward. I'm not sure what sort of position he was playing, but know that he's back and fit is good. Sheldrick, having already played a quarter in the AFL, he backed up and played and got 18 touches and a goal in the VFL. Melican took 7 marks, and then this HHK, who I can't say that. What's his name? What's his real name? I've got my
Hugo
own name for him.
Hawkahan.
Yeah, this bloke. I've been calling him Hunt Hit Kill because of his HHK. Because yeah, so HHK got 3 goals. So there's a handful of guys at least in the reserves that if they want to mix something up, they can bring in. There'll be certainly one force change because Laddams isn't playing. And then you got to think, who do you bring in? Because of those ones in the reserves, the only one who's tall is Melican. And then maybe you reshuffle a bit. Maybe Francis goes back forward and Melican plays in the back, but then you've got more instability in the back line again. Who knows what they'll do? Honestly, I wouldn't want to be John Longmire and the match committee this week. He's got a tough job.
Yeah, a tough one, especially against Carlton, who just like a unique situation. They're a very I was going to say standard in quotations setup. Like got some balls in the middle, some guys who can run the outside, some sharp kickers on the half back, and then they've got a couple of tall forwards and a couple of tall backs. Like they've got all the pieces on. In theory, they're all there. Yeah, that would be a tough one. One thing about Gould, I'm just going to go back to him quickly. I just remembered. There's been the suggestion, and I think it was Noddy that raised it. Noddy has some pretty good creative suggestions, to be honest with you. And he was suggesting maybe forward would be the way to go. I think you and both him were suggesting that might be half a decent go, considering that probably doesn't have the pace to and the stamina necessarily to go in defense at the moment. But he's a decent kick. He's a big body, and he can take a mark. Would a forward make some sense to fill him up if we could bring in Melly and send him up?
I don't know, because with that, because I definitely think that he's a big, strong body. You could put him in the goal square. I kind of think that his build, and I've only seen him on TV. I've never seen him up close or already even live playing. But he looks like he would have been a perfect full forward in like the 90s. He's got that sort of body,
bit of a unit,
yeah, like a beast. Like we were chatting on the group chat the other day, and I was thinking like if he just put on a couple of extra kilos, he'd be like a perfect linebacker in the NFL or something. Like he's just a lump of a fella.
Yeah.
Whether that works in modern AFL where these forwards, like even the full forwards, they run a lot. Like they really run a lot. So I mean, I don't know what his endurance level is, but I think like keeping him in the back line, he certainly seems comfortable behind the ball. And it'd almost be the opposite because normally it's the way that if you've got like a want-away forward or midfielder, then you don't delist them until you've tried them in the back line. Maybe it's going to be the other way around. They chuck him forward and see what he's got. But
yeah, he might be half decent at it. We'll find out. I mean, I don't necessarily know. It's something we need to do now, but food for thought, I guess. Food for thought. It's about where we can stand right now. Right. Okay. So that's the post game. The only MRO situation was when Hayward decided to jump at someone at full pitch and took them out, and he was sent to MRO. They threw it out the door. They didn't see anything in it, so nothing to speak about there. And I guess we get stuck into the next week's game, which is against Carlton Blues on a Friday night blockbuster at the SCG. Exciting as hell. Look, they got stood up pretty well against the Pies. The Pies are red hot. And Pies, if to be fair, from what I feel about the Blues, is the Blues kind of handle the ball quite a bit. To give you an idea, I think they're coming first in disposals in the competition against all teams. But with that kind of ball usage, a high pressure team is going to make you fumble. They're going to make you lose it. Guys like Collingwood. And that's exactly what kind of happened. And it seems to be like a trade of theirs they just continue going with. It, in my eyes and with my Swans coloured glasses on, it does feel that this does help us a bit, given us we try to play a similar style. We try to get a lot of pressure on, although we're kind of off the mark last week. What do you know about the game? What's your feeling towards the game against the Blues? Anything we should consider?
I've seen Carlton play a few times this year. They've been pretty ordinary, to be honest. And I don't know. I think that the Swans can beat them, um,
Mm.
but it's a matter of which Carlton turns up to, because they've been really, really hot and cold, and the Victorian media has been like choking them this week and in previous weeks. The CEO of the club, or the president of the club, or whoever it was, has had to come out this week and guarantee Michael Voss's tenure into the end of his contract at the end of next year. Like all of this
Yeah.
sort of typical overreaction that only the Victorian football media is capable of. But but yeah, I think that they will maybe appreciate, even though they're playing on Friday night, maybe it'll be nice for them to get away from Melbourne and a bit more relaxing, given the amount of heat that's been on them this week. And I'd like to see the Swans just not give them a sniff,
Mm.
just really, really come out and because the Swans, like, they're okay. We're missing a lot of players, but we've still got a lot of very good players, and there's no reason they can't come out and play their best football and knock these guys off, and keep on a winning roll, get a second one heading into the bye.
Yep. Yeah. I agree with that.
I'm I'm not
We've
that
got a chance.
upset
Like,
about losing to them if we have to, but you know, it sucks. You get to this point in the season where you've already lost like 5 games in a row, and you're like, oh, I don't really expect anything anymore.
oh
it's,
no,
it's, it's
it's kind
so
of a bit
quick to
dull,
get
isn't it?
resigned to losing. This is the '90s Swans fan coming out in me. I think, like, in the early '90s.
You've had enough of it.
It's just
Yeah.
it's more
Well,
comfortable to go. Oh, we probably won't win, but it'd be nice if we did. No, bugger it. I want to beat these buggers. Let's win. Let's win.
I want
Roos
to win.
Swans.
I want
Yeah.
to win. Not to kick them one day down necessarily, but just I think we can win, and I think if we get these young kids to kind of turn it on for like another Richmond-ish game, where everyone just plays through their freaking heart and just gets it done, that would be huge for me. If we look at their last 5 matches, the Carlton and the Swans are both on 1 win each. And to be fair, both with cheap wins, although Carlton's much more impressive. Carlton's only had the 1 win against West Coast, the opposite of East Coast, the West Coast Eagles. I think they've beaten by 98 points from my quick math. So pretty solid win by our friends over there at Carlton. But other than that, they lost against Collingwood, they lost against the Bulldogs, they lost against the Lions, and lost against St Kilda. To be fair, those 4
Yeah, it's a
top
tough run
6
of games,
teams.
isn't it?
So yeah, that's a tough win of games. And then we look at our side, we've lost to Freo, Collingwood, GWS Giants, and the Cats. So yeah, for the most part, it's all very theoretical at this point in terms of form. Both teams are kind of limping into this one. Although the Swans with the 1 win on the trot to hopefully give them a bit of something. Um, anything we should consider here, mate? I'm really struggling to think of anything other than our style of game with pressure would be huge against them if we can turn it on, get that going. If I were Horse, I'd be looking at bringing in someone with a bit of speed and can put some tackle pressure on. So, like, I'm thinking, yeah, Gus Bus, probably Warner if he's up to it. I saw Wicks here in the
Yeah, I'd like
VFL with
Wicks
8
in.
tackles, like huge.
Yeah, Sam. Because for me, there's 2 ways to look at the season from here. Really, either we've put the queue in the rack and said, no, we're not going to make finals, so we're just playing kids because we want to get games into them and stuff. That's one way of
Mm,
looking at the season. Or there's no bugger it. We're still trying to win every single game because we still think we're a sniff. And that second option is still where I am mentally, and that's why I'd like to bring Wicks back in, because he
mm,
will just, hunt pressure like across that half forward line. He won't let anything get around him because he's a really, really good pressure player. And
mm,
like you said, they like to flick the ball around. They like to overuse it quite a bit, even the Carlton players. And
mhm.
guys like Wicks won't give them that space to do it. So I reckon he'd be a good in. But then it's a matter of, do you want to bring another tall when you've lost Laddams? I don't know, or maybe drop one of the others, like one of the younger ones, or
Yeah.
Stevens or Clark. Even if you're going to
Mm.
bring in someone like Wicks, does Clark also play in the same team as Wicks? I'm not sure.
Yeah, yeah. One thing where we totally missed out on is the pressure inside 50. Our tackles inside 50 have not been where they need to be. So yeah, I agree. Wixie would be handy at that. I know
Yeah,
Swans fans freak out about him because he doesn't get any goals, but that's not necessarily his position.
he's a pressure
And so,
forward. Like, this is the
yeah,
thing that always drives me crazy. Every time I see criticism of like pressure half forward, like small forward players. Their job isn't any of that. You don't see
Mm.
their job. Their job's invisible. The only people who know what their job is like the coach and the players and stuff.
Yeah.
And Wicks is that player. Like he's a sort of player that teammates love because they know how hard he works to give them opportunity.
Yeah. When the opposition halfback has to panic a kick that goes to a contested mark, someone like a McLean gets to the ground and then one of the wingers gets it back into our inside 50. That's the situation where the pressure kicked in. That's the pressure that you had to force upon the halfback to make a mistake or to not find a clean kick. That's what Wicks' job is. That's what those pressure half forwards' jobs are, and that's what you want to see. And that's something we could really use to get some multiple entries inside 50 because we've not been doing that
And
well.
he's elite at that. Like last year
Yeah.
and the year before, especially when Wicks was healthy and playing every week, his pressure stats were way up the top every week. Like
Yeah.
he's amazing at that forward pressure.
Yeah, yeah. He might not score the goals, but he'll do the job. That's for sure. As we wrap into one last thing, I'm just going to quickly. I just remembered that I had some good stats here for Rowie.
Nice.
So Rowbottom is averaging 7 tackles a game, which is very, very good. I think it's coming 5th in the tally in the AFL. And to give you an idea, the most tackles for a season for a Swan actually is held by Parker and Brett Kirk. 2 different games with Parker doing it in 6.5 tackles per game. So Rowie is beating him there. And Brett Kirk, the absolute animal that he is, got it done in 7.7 average back in 2009. So, albeit Kirky actually had less games, obviously, from numbers, less games to do it. And both of them had some finals probably to do win as well. So Rowie is looking grand, man. 7 average tackles a game and 5th on the ladder. That's what his role is, and he's doing it. Like, really happy to see it.
Yeah, he's been good. Like he's not getting as much of the footy himself for sure,
Mm,
but he's really doing a lot of that really strong pressure work.
yeah, pretty happy to see. Like, he might not take that, given that Parker got himself 26 games to do it in. But either way, you have to give credit where it's due because Rowie, if tackles are his thing, tackles are getting it done. So that's good to see. Mate, one last thing. You've got some names here of some players.
Yeah, I got some players' names, and I've got a match result to think back to as well.
Oh,
On a Friday night in May in 1995, on the 19th of May, so it's almost exactly to the day, but not quite. In 1995, that was the year that Carlton won the premiership. That was the last time that Carlton won a flag. On Friday night at the SCG, the Swans, who didn't make the finals that year, by the way, we beat the soon-to-be premier Carlton Blues at the SCG by 72 points. We smashed them,
Jesus. Nice.
132 to 60. Absolutely tore them apart. So I'm hoping for a little bit of that aura to remain. 23,000 people watched the Swans absolutely thrash the eventual premiers of that season in round 8. So I'm hoping for a little bit more of that, and that sort of got us thinking about some of the greats or not so greats that have played for both us and the Blues. And the obvious ones are the ones who are hopefully not going to torment us on Friday, which is George Hewitt and Nick Newman, who both are missed. But then there's some pretty big names who've played for both the Swans and the Blues. Greg Williams, Brownlow medalist, is the obvious one. David Rees-Jones, if you go back that far. And then the other one that I remember from that period, like from the 90s period watching as a kid, Simon Minton-Connell. I don't know if anyone remembers him, but he went from the Blues to the Swans and then to the Hawks, and I think finished up with the Dogs in the end. And he was an absolute favourite of mine when I was young. He's a forward. So there's a little bit of history, but we're just hoping we can get a bit of spirit from that 1995 thrashing of Carlton and take it into Friday night.
Oh, I love it. Take that form in. Take
Yep.
that form into the game.
How many of our players were born then? Shit, that's 1995. How many of the current Swans are even alive?
One.
Yeah. Like Buddy was just born, maybe.
Buddy, yeah, like that's about it, I think. Like,
Yeah.
no, Buddy would have been like 88 or something, right? He would have been around
Yeah,
there. Yeah,
something like
so
he would have been around. But here's some of the names that played for the Swans in that game. Listen, I won't read all of them. There's 20 odd, but some of the ones that stand out. Darren Creswell played in that match.
yeah,
Wade Chapman played. Andrew Dunkley played in that one. Adam
great shit.
Huskus was always a favourite. Paul Kelly played in that game.
Yeah.
Dale Lewis, Tony Lockett, and Mickey O'Loughlin, Jason Mooney, and Paul Roos. And then a very, very young Anthony Rocker, who went off to
Oh,
Collingwood and had a
wow.
much better career there. Also played for the
Wow, look
Swans
at
that day. So
that.
there's some history. That's the weekly history football lesson. It's
That's,
yeah, some good
oh, that's
Carlton players
awesome.
played too, but I won't go through all of them. Craig Bradley,
No,
he's the only one that I'll mention. He was out there.
look at that. There you go.
Yeah.
So we take in the heat that we had for that week into this game. Hopefully get up over Blues. Mate, do you want any predictions or are you happy to let that go?
No, I'm going to go in with confidence. I reckon we're going to win. We're going to win by 20 points.
Love it. Look, I want to see effort. I think we've got it in us. I think that the team can believe in what they have. The game against the Roos was a bit ordinary in terms of what the scoreline said, but damn well started with effort. And if we can take that on, you never know. And if we can, I think this one's going to be more of a strategic win, to be honest with you. If we can get that done, lock down the right person and not let them run on, we've got ourselves a pretty good chance. So that's where I sit it. All right, mate. Well, that takes us to the end of the episodes. On behalf of Bob, thank you so much for listening in. We'll put this on every single week. And if you ever want to ask a question or whatever, make sure to shoot us through the message, whatever social media takes your fancy. We'll see you at the SCG on Friday. But until then, up the Bloods and can you,
And you
Swannies?
Swannies.